They say with age comes wisdom and maturity. Well, I couldn't tell watching this film. Hey everyone, this is the Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And of course, I'm coming to you all with yet another review, this time for Wolves. Written and directed by Jon Watts, and starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt. Story-wise, the film is centered around two professional fixers who are forced to work together to handle a case involving a prominent New York official. But considering that their preference is to operate as lone wolves, this leads to, many complications. So, as always, I'm going to start with the pros, and let me say that there was something really refreshing about this film, and I was kind of surprised by it. So for starters, as I mentioned, this film was written and directed by Jon Watts. Most of you will be familiar with him for his work on the MCU Spider-Man films. But prior to that, he also directed the film Cop Car and Clown, which is one I've been meaning to watch for the longest, and since we are in October, maybe it's time for me to finally give it a chance. And yes, there's something to be said about the small independent filmmaker to massive big budget MCU film pipeline, but I think that's a discussion we can save for a whole nother video. But given his work on those films, it was nice to see Jon Watts take an approach to something that in many ways is somewhat of a 180. It is very dialed down, it is very subtle, in a lot of ways, not in every single way. There's a lot of dynamics that are kind of quiet and laid back, and it is far away from the big bombastic over-the-top colors and action sequences and CGI effects, all that stuff that we got with some of these MCU films, which I haven't necessarily been mad at, but this is definitely a nice departure. And I enjoyed the fact that Jon Watts was able to take this particular film on. I also have to say that there is something about old school stars, and maybe it's because, I had the opportunity to watch some of these actors growing up throughout the 90s, as a 90s baby, as I always say. Now, although Brad Pitt and George Clooney were not actors I was ever 100% connected to, I will say both of them did impact me in different ways. Brad Pitt with his role as Louis in Interview with the Vampire, in addition to George Clooney playing Bruce Wayne, or George Clooney playing himself as Bruce Wayne in Batman and Robin. But regardless, I do have fond memories of both those films, and they're both ones. I understand what people say about Batman and Robin, but that thing is entertaining to me. I don't care how bad people say it is hilarious. Especially with some of the more serious entries we've gotten. I'm not mad at it, but Batman and Robin, ooh, the nostalgia. It takes me out every time. But I have to say that what I appreciated most is that this film reminds you of why actors like George Clooney and Brad Pitt are such stars. Why they've been able to maintain the careers that they have, and why it is so important that we get some new up-and-coming stars. Because I'm just like, once these people are gone, I'm like, are we going to even have people that can command that same star power and just bring performances like this and just resonate on the screen like this? It's possible, but I'm not sure. So I think if nothing else, it was just something refreshing in the sense that we are seeing stars, bona fide stars, whether they're to your liking or not. And it is their chemistry that makes this film so entertaining. And then, of course, Jon Watts and his writing and the way that they play off of each other. Even with folks who are up there in age, they can be petty and they can be childish and they can hold grudges and they can do things that can definitely undermine their professional obligations, to say the least. But just seeing them together, especially having seen them in the Ocean's 11 trilogy, picking up from that in a sense, it was great to see them together. And every time they were on screen and it was focused on them, I think that's when the film was like, yes, it was something special. I also think just the cinematography and the camera work as far as capturing the city, especially late at night, the city of New York. I say it all the time, give me a cityscape, give me, a skyline. The fact that so much of this film took place in New York, it kind of made New York feel like a character in and of itself, which it is. Like, no matter what it's in, New York is always a character, but because so much of the film is so subtle, this felt like New York was its own character, even with all the shenanigans we see going on. All right, now jumping over to the cons. I would say, given that George Clooney and Brad Pitt are doing so much of the heavy lifting here, I think everything else that is surrounding them outside of New York, story-wise, is just kind of blah. There is something that happens involving the chase sequence. That was really fun. Things really pick up there. But I think once we get to the resolution of the chase scene, everything past that is kind of like, eh. And then we have another character in the mix, and it's just kind of like, I get the dynamic there, but for me, it just was not interesting. It just kind of lost its momentum. It was not nearly as entertaining as it was when we were just watching these two characters interact and having to solve this massive problem and work together on this case. And then I think because we've seen, or some of us, I'm guessing, have seen fixer films, there is a particular genre or even subgenre when it comes to professional fixers. So I felt like a lot of this felt like we were delving deeper into those cliches that we've seen before. And none of that for me just ever really worked. It wasn't horrible, but I definitely was not nearly as engaged or as invested when it came down to those details and all those pieces and figures we had to slide in regarding the story. It was just kind of like, okay, this is fine, but back to Brad Pitt and George Clooney, please. That is what is making this work. And I just felt like anytime we got away from that, you kind of saw how fairly weak everything else that was not involving them really was. So I'm going to give Wolves a B-. Now, although I would not say the film itself is just spectacular, I do think it shows that when you have just some bona fide chemistry from two stars who have been in the game as long as George Clooney and Brad Pitt have, it's just like magic. I mean, it just leaps off the screen. And I will say, given how certain things transpire, I would actually be here for a sequel, because I feel like even though it was not necessarily everything it could have been, there was just something so refreshing about it. And I do think that there was something that felt nostalgic, like in a throwback way. This kind of felt like the type of films I would have seen and have been watching back in the 90s. And I think that was also something that made it feel a little bit more special, even with the things that didn't necessarily work for me. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing Wolves 2. For anyone who has seen this, let me know if you would be interested in that as well. Did you like this enough to where you'd want to see a sequel? Or is it more like, this is a one and done, we can keep it here? For me, I'd like to see one, but of course, I'm always interested in seeing what the audience, what the subscribers have to say. So as always, please feel free to drop down below and let me know your thoughts. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you with the movies.